Hey guys, what's up? Your friendly neighborhood 2-Bit Jesus here, giving you yet another 2-Bit review. Now, for this review, I've been seeing a lot of news articles recently about Space Jam 2, and it having LeBron James, and of course the great Terrence Nance directing, or is it Nancy? I don't know, I'm very bad with pronunciations, please forgive me. So looking at all this news about Space Jam 2 and the fact that it's going to be directed by the same guy who did Black Panther, which is arguably my favorite movie from last year, or the fact that it's going to have LeBron James, who is arguably the best player in basketball right now, it got me thinking about the greatest of all time, Michael. No, not Michael Jackson, even though I think he's probably one of the greatest singers and dancers of all time. No, not Mike Tyson. I mean, I don't even think he's the greatest boxer of all time, and I mean, I can see where you're going with this, you know. Mike, makes sense. No, not George Michael, even though he's probably one of the greatest singers of all time. I mean, he does have Michael in his name, but no. No, that's not even close. Michaels, I guess, Michaels. I mean, Shawn Michaels is arguably the greatest in-ring performer of all time, but that's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the one, the only, Michael Jordan. Arguably the greatest basketball player of all time and starred in the greatest Looney Tunes movie of all time, Space Jam. And like any great movie from the 90s, you of course had to have a movie game tie-in. So today we're looking at Space Jam for the original PlayStation.
Whoa! I don't play defense.
Space Jam is an arcade-style sports game published by Acclaim Entertainment and developed by Sculpted Software. It was released for the PlayStation in October of 1996. It was also released on the Sega Saturn and PC. The game is a movie tie-in with the film of the same name. Sculpted Software had already developed a Looney Tunes basketball game titled Looney Tunes B-Ball for publisher Sunsoft the previous year. It plays a lot like Space Jam. You can kind of see the development team took what they had already made with Looney Tunes B-Ball and just transposed it over to Space Jam. So looking back, it's not surprising that Acclaim Entertainment, who famously had been publishing the NBA Jam series, teamed up with Sculpted Software to create a Space Jam movie tie-in game. Well, that's all, folks, for the tidbits. Now let's jam into this review.
Oh yeah. Whoa! I don't play defense.
As I stated in the tidbits, the game takes more of an arcade style to the rules and gameplay of basketball as opposed to a simulation style of the rules and gameplay. So just like Looney Tunes B-Ball or NBA Jam, each team plays 3-on-3. You have the choice of whether to play as the Toon Squad or the Monstars. There's really only two teams, so it's very limited in that aspect. If you choose the Toon Squad, it comes packed with a ton of famous Looney Tunes characters like Porky Pig, Pepe Le Pew, Daffy Duck, Yosemite Sam, Elmer Fudd, Foghorn Leghorn, Wile E. Coyote, Sylvester, the Tasmanian Devil, and of course none other than the famous Bugs Bunny. You also have Lola Bunny, who was created as kind of a quasi-love interest, and I also should say slash sex object for the Space Jam movie. And of course you got Michael Jordan. His stats are maxed out and you gotta have him on your team if you're the Toon Squad. Because doesn't everyone want to be like Mike? I mean, greatest basketball player ever. Shut up, LeBron James. The Monstar team doesn't have that great of a roster. I mean, it's the Monstars from the movie, but it's not as deep as the Toon Squad roster. You have Knot, Bang, Blanco, Bupkis, and Pound. You know what? Before I forget, I have a little rant here. The fact that the Toon Squad doesn't have freaking Bill Murray. He was in the movie. He came in at the last minute to help save the Toon Squad from the Monstars. He was there. How come you didn't add him in this game? We needed some Bill Murray. Yes, I happen to be a fan of Bill Murray, early Bill Murray, before he decided to do some of that weird crap. You know, back when he was the asshole Peter Venkman on Ghostbusters, that era of Bill Murray. Love him. Even in this movie, loved him. And he wasn't there. They didn't have Bill Murray. You have Michael Jordan. Of course, you gotta have Michael Jordan. He's the main character of the movie. And dare I say the game. He's on the front cover of the game. But no Bill Murray. Even just let me have him as a secret character to unlock. But he's not there. And he was a very important character to the story. Why isn't he there? Alright. Moving on. Now, like I said before, the Toon Squad stats are stacked, and a player versus player, especially a good, decent to good players, the Toon Squad's always going to cream the Monstars. Now, I only played against the computer, and depending on the difficulty you choose, the Monstars can get the upper hand on you if you're the Toon Squad, but for the most part, it's hands down, the Toon Squad wins every single time. Now, that being said, the gameplay is decent. It doesn't really do anything to wow me. I wouldn't even say its system is as deep and fun as NBA Jam. It really does feel like they kind of took the basic structure that they had created with Looney Tunes B-Ball and took it over to this game. And they didn't really add a whole lot. In fact, I think they took away some of the elements that they had in Looney Tunes B-Ball, probably because they made that game with Sun Software, so they were having to start from scratch and just using the experience and the knowledge they already had creating that game when they created this game. That being said, it really feels like maybe if the developer had had more time to bake this game in the oven, then the gameplay would have been more varied. Now, there are two modes, though honestly I can't tell the difference between them. There is the play game, which is just the Toon Squad versus the Monstars, and then there's Intergalactic Tournament, which is the Toon Squad versus the Monstars in a tournament. But since there's only two teams, it's basically the same mode. There's not really a whole lot of difference. A nice little addition are minigames that take place at the beginning of the game and at the beginning of each quarter of the game. And they take some inspiration from the movie, like the first minigame you play is Daffy Duck trying to get all of Michael Jordan's equipment so he can practice for the game. And then another one's a weird one where you're racing through space with Speedy Gonzales against a Monstar ship. Something like that. It's weird. Another minigame takes, again, inspiration from the movie, which was them trying to get, the special water or the special juice for Michael Jordan, and I could never figure it out. I know that was the goal, was to find that bottle of water, but besides that, I couldn't find it. That's the bad thing about this game with its minigames, is it doesn't really tell you how to do it. It just kind of goes, here's the minigame, throws you in there, and it doesn't tell you how to achieve the goal. You just kind of got to figure it out for yourself. And here's the catch. All the minigames are timed, so you only have like a minute, maybe 30 seconds sometimes to get all of this done. And they just kind of throw you into it and don't really explain anything. I'm not looking for my hand to be held, but I'm at least saying, hey, you need to do this and this to find what you're looking for. Instead, they just kind of throw you in it, and you have like maybe 10 seconds to learn. So in summation, with lackluster gameplay that doesn't do anything to really advance the genre, and dare I say anything to reach the same bar that NBA Jam had set, or even Sculpted Software's own Looney Tunes B-Ball had achieved. There's also not a lot of variety in the teams, since there's only two teams to pick from, and one team is very bare bones and basic, and the other team that is bursting with characters with maxed out skill sets. And while the minigames do break up the monotony of the basic basketball arcade game we have here, they also don't really help explain what you have to do in them, so they're more frustrating than fun. So sadly, I'm gonna have to give Space Jam's gameplay 1 bit.
Hey! Perhaps I could be of some assistance.
Out of 4.
Mike.
Oh yeah. Whoa! I don't play defense.
All the music tracks serve as pretty much background noise. You don't really notice them too much. I mean, they're not terrible, but again, it's nothing that really catches your ear, and you won't really notice it when you're playing the game. One high point for me is the broadcaster, who will announce the basic things like when you score a 2-point goal or a 3-point goal or goaltending, and his voice reminds me of the NBA Jam sportscaster, and it's just, it kind of really gets you pumped and into the game, the way that the lines are delivered and the excitement and the sense of urgency that the sportscaster has. As it pertains to making you feel like you're in a basketball game, the sounds are all there, the sound effects, the squeaky sneakers, the sports broadcaster, the crowd, and all of that was done really well, but unfortunately, the music itself is just kind of, it's background. It's almost like they composed it, they put it in the background, they also turned it really down, they turned it down low. You know, you've heard of turning it up to 11, well, they turned this one down to a 1, or I would even say a 0.1, because it's just in the background, you don't really notice it, but it is there. So with that being said, I will give Space Jam's sound a respectable 1.5 bits.
Hey! Perhaps I could be of some assistance.
Out of 4.
He shoots. The Looney Tunes are up by 10. 1 minute remaining.
Oh, yeah. Whoa! I don't play defense.
Presentation is the high point for this game. I really love the intro to the game where you get the Space Jam logo and you see the spaceship flying around and the little Martians coming out of their ship. It's really cool. The graphics overall look really great. The PlayStation, I think, everyone remembers it as one of the first 3D consoles, but that system was probably one of the best 2D, and I would even say 2.5D, if you will, systems around. 2D games just really look awesome on the original PlayStation. The developer did a really great job getting all the characters to look just like their movie counterparts. Now, there is a bit of product placement. In the main basketball court, you clearly see the golden arches of McDonald's. So, yeah. I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense. You know, you're making a movie tie-in game, and maybe McDonald's had some kind of deal with the movie studio, and they're like, hey, you gotta put McDonald's in the game. The level design, well, there's not much level design there. You've got the main basketball court, and that's about it. And then you have the mini games. But the mini games are a little short, you know, like I said, 1 minute, you know, intervals in between the main games. There's not much level design going on here. I wish they would have at least put a few different basketball courts, and dare I even say, put in a few different teams. That would have been interesting as well. I think you, of course, could have had the Toon Squad versus the Monstars, but even split the teams up even more, have each team be 3 members, and you could have Bugs Bunny have a team, have Daffy Duck have his own team, have Elmer Fudd have his own team. But unfortunately, just 2 teams, 1 basketball court to play on, and about 4 or 5 mini-game locations to go to. There's just not a whole lot there. Now, as far as the story goes, the game roughly follows the story. There is a basketball game with the Toon Squad going up against the Monstars, but there's not really any cutscenes. And 2 of the mini games follow the story. You have Daffy Duck trying to get all of Michael's gear, and then you have Bugs Bunny looking for the water that has Michael's special stuff in it. There's those 2 mini games, but besides that, there's not a whole lot of story elements to the game. There's no cutscenes besides, of course, the intro to the game. And when you do win, it just shows a still image of the Toon Squad celebrating, and you hear their voices, and then it switches to showing the Monstars losing and being sad, and there's really no outro to it. Again, I'm going back to, if the development team had more time, they probably would have been able to put in a different story mode. They might have been able to give us different, teams instead of just 2 teams, and maybe even different locations. But I do think the product placement still would have been there with all the McDonald's stuff. So my final tally for Space Jam's presentation is an average 2 bits.
Hey! Perhaps I could be of some assistance.
Out of 4. Let's see you do better, LeBron.
Not Toon Squad.
Oh, yeah. Whoa! I don't play defense.
Space Jam on the PlayStation for me bordered between mediocre and bad. I wouldn't say it's a terrible game. There are some fun moments to be had, but when you really look at it with only really one game mode and only 2 teams to choose from, and both teams are completely unbalanced where one team is really bad and the other team is just stacked with really good players, it leaves more to be desired. But hey, you know what? I get it. The higher-ups probably wanted this game to release around the same time as the movie to maximize their profits, but I can't help but feel that if the development team had just been given just a little bit more time, we would have had a much better game. But hey, that's how the game industry is sometimes. So my final verdict for Space Jam on the original PlayStation is a strong pass for the casual collector, and I would say a recommended look, but not necessarily buy for the hardcore collector of the original PlayStation. You can find it between $6 and $10 depending on the condition you're looking for online. Well guys, that's another review in the books. I hope you guys join me next month. I'm going to be taking a look at a franchise I haven't looked at in a couple of years. I hope to see you there. Anyway guys, that's it for me. 2-Bit Jesus signing out, saying stay safe and play on.